She told me she was working late again. Emergency session, she said, like it was just another Tuesday, like it was normal for her to cancel dinner with our son because some neurotic couple couldn't survive one more evening without her professional wisdom. I knew right away she was lying, not because of anything she said, but because I had already seen where she really was. An hour before her message, I watched her from the upper deck of a parking garage across the street from a hotel on the east side of town. She wasn't helping a client. She was holding hands with a man in a gray jacket and leaning against his chest while they waited for the valet. I watched as he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear like he'd done it 1,000 times, like it belonged to him. I saw her laugh and tap his chest like she used to do with me, back when we were still in sync, and she looked at me like I mattered. They kissed, not shy, not rushed, just the kind of kiss that says this isn't the first and it won't be the last. I didn't cry. I just stood there for a long time, staring, like my brain had to buffer the betrayal before it could hit me full force. I took a picture, not to confront her with it, not yet, but because I knew that once I left that parking garage, I'd start doubting what I saw. I needed proof, not for her, for myself. We'd been married 12 years, and for the last 3, I felt like I'd been living with a stranger who still smelled like my wife. She worked in event planning, high-end weddings mostly, so her schedule was a mess. Late nights, last-minute venue visits, client meltdowns. I got used to it. I'd always made excuses for her, told myself she was just under pressure, that we'd reconnect when things calmed down. But things never calmed down. And honestly, I don't think she wanted them to. That night, after she came home around midnight, still pretending she'd been helping some bride who couldn't pick a color scheme, I was sitting in the kitchen. I asked how it went, and she gave me that tired smile, the one she saved for moments when lying came too easy. She said, "They're a mess, but I think I helped them figure things out." I nodded, poured myself another drink, and just said, "Good." She kissed my head and went upstairs like she hadn't just spent the evening with someone else's mouth on hers. I didn't follow. I just sat there staring at my phone, not even looking at the picture, just holding it. The next few days, I didn't say anything. I acted normal. I made breakfast. I went to work. I picked up our son from soccer. But I watched her more closely. The way she answered texts too fast, how she angled her laptop away from me when I walked by, how her perfume changed, subtle things only someone in love would notice. And that's the thing, I was still in love with her. That's why it hurt so much. Because if I didn't care, none of this would matter. I'd just leave. But I did care. I cared so much it made me physically sick. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I'd lie awake wondering how long it had been going on, if it started before our last anniversary, if she was thinking about him during our vacation in Seattle, if every "I love you" she'd said in the last year had been a lie. I started digging. No phones, no texts. I didn't want digital evidence. I wanted real things. I called her assistant, pretending I was planning a surprise party and needed help coordinating with her schedule. The assistant didn't even hesitate, told me she'd been spending her Thursday evenings working on a special project with a partner from another agency. I asked the name. She said Julian. The same guy I'd seen her with at the hotel. Tall, bald, cocky-looking in a way that only guys who drive German cars can pull off. I didn't react. Just thanked her, hung up, and sat there staring at the carpet like it was going to give me answers. The next day, I visited the hotel. Told the front desk I was part of a company retreat that had recently used their ballroom. Asked about availability and casually mentioned that a colleague of mine, described Julian to a T, had stayed there recently with someone. The clerk, young and clueless, nodded and said, "Oh yeah, Mr. Palmer's here a lot with his wife." His wife. That's what he said. I smiled, thanked him, and walked out. Either he was lying or Julian had a whole other life. Either way, that confirmed more than I needed to know. I didn't confront her that night. Or the night after. I waited until I had more. I drove across the city to the warehouse where they stored event gear, linens, lights, all the overpriced junk they used to make weddings look like Pinterest dreams. I parked across the street in an unmarked van my buddy let me borrow from his moving company. Sat there for 5 hours, reading, watching, waiting. Around 10:30, she showed up. She wasn't alone. Julian pulled up 5 minutes later. They didn't even wait to go inside. He grabbed her around the waist, lifted her slightly, and she wrapped her legs around him like she hadn't seen him in years. It was disgusting, and it was heartbreaking, and it was exactly what I needed. I left before they went inside. I didn't need to see more. I drove home and started planning. Not revenge, yet. Just the confrontation. I wanted to do it on my terms, Not in some emotional outburst where she could spin it, gaslight me, or cry her way out of it. I wanted to control every word, every reaction. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. And so I waited. It was a Thursday when I decided it was time. Not because something new happened, but because everything had already happened and I had seen enough. For 3 weeks, I had watched her movements like a man who already knew the ending of the story, but still forced himself to sit through every scene. I knew her schedule better than she did. I knew what time she left the office, when she stopped pretending she had a meeting, where she parked her car, when she didn't want me to see the hotel receipt. I knew the rhythm of her betrayal, how she'd act exhausted when she walked through the door, how she'd make sure our son was asleep before she'd finally let the fake tiredness fall off her face and sit there on the couch like she had carried the weight of the world. It wasn't guilt. That would have been too human. It was calculation. A performance. I wasn't angry in the way most people imagine. It wasn't screaming or smashing anything. It was a pressure that sat right in the middle of my chest and stayed there every hour of every day. I couldn't laugh. Couldn't even fake interest in anything. My friends noticed, but I brushed them off. You can't explain this kind of slow decay to people who haven't lived it. They think betrayal is dramatic. It isn't. It's cold. It's quiet. It's long nights with no sleep and mornings that feel exactly like the night before. It's eating food that tastes like air and pretending you don't see your life crumbling in real time. I chose Thursday because our son had a sleepover. I wanted the house empty. I wanted to be alone with her when I tore everything apart. She walked in at exactly 9:13, the same time as every Thursday, coat half off, purse sliding off her shoulder. I was at the table, not drinking, not watching anything, just sitting. She stopped when she saw me. I could tell she knew right then. Something in my face must have told her this wasn't just another awkward silence. She forced a smile. "You're still up?" she asked, her voice strained, like she already needed to defend herself and hadn't figured out what lie to use yet. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stared at her. When I finally spoke, it was low, steady. "I followed you." The silence that hit the room was instant and sharp. Her face didn't change right away. She blinked a couple of times, then tried to laugh, like it was absurd. "What are you talking about?" she said, walking toward the kitchen. I stood up. "Don't move." She froze mid-step. "I saw you with him. At the hotel. At the warehouse. You've been meeting him for over a month, maybe longer. I've seen the way he touches you. I've seen the way you let him." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then her hand went to her temple, like she suddenly had a headache. "You've got it wrong," she said quietly. "It's not what you think." That sentence lit something in me I didn't know was still there. I slammed my hand on the table so hard the salt shaker bounced. "Don't you dare insult me with that nonsense. I watched you put your mouth on him in public. I've got pictures. I've got dates. You're not getting out of this by pretending I imagined it." She stepped back like the truth finally hit her in the face, and she had no idea how to respond. She sat down slowly, still holding her purse in her lap like it could protect her. Her voice dropped, more tired than apologetic. "I didn't plan for it to happen." I laughed. "Nobody ever does. But it happened. And you lied about it. To me. To your son. You put on this whole routine, coming home talking about work stress while you were sneaking around with a man you swore was just a colleague." Her face twisted, like she was trying to cry, but the tears weren't coming. "I was lonely, Alex. You work odd hours. You're always exhausted. And I didn't feel seen anymore." That sentence made my fists clench. I wasn't working crazy hours for fun. I was doing it to pay for this house, your car, your office space, your life. You wanted the freedom to build your business, and I gave it to you. And while I was saving people's lives, you were out building a second one behind my back. She looked away, the shame finally starting to break through. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said softly. "But it is like this. And now you have to deal with it." She wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat. "What are you going to do?" "I already did it," I said. "I've got a meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. I'm filing. And before you ask, yes, I have enough. Enough to make sure I get custody, that you don't see a cent more than necessary, and that Julian gets dragged into this if he ever dares to make an appearance." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't. Try me." She didn't speak after that. Just sat there, shaking, maybe trying to think of a way to fix it, to twist it, to shift the blame. But I had all the power now, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, she was gone when I woke up. Not a word, Not a note, not even a message on my phone. I went downstairs and saw that her car was missing from the driveway. That wasn't part of the plan, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to chase her or ask for her side again. I already gave her that chance, and she used it to serve up the weakest excuse I'd ever heard. The lawyer's office was 30 minutes away, and I got there early, sat in the parking lot and waited. I wasn't nervous, not even a little. I was clear-headed in a way I hadn't been for weeks. The kind of calm you get when you've seen all you needed to see and don't have any more questions. I wasn't looking for explanations anymore. I was here to move forward. The attorney was direct, didn't waste time. I handed over everything I had, photos, timelines, dates, even the printed schedule from the warehouse deliveries that proved she was never where she said she'd been. He nodded through most of it, flipping through the stack like it was a file he'd seen 100 times. But then he looked up and said something that stuck. "You realize you're holding all the cards here, right?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him and waited for the next part. He kept going. "With this kind of evidence, there's no way she walks out of this with anything she didn't earn. You've got the high ground. She won't get custody unless you let her. And if she's working with that other guy, we can make sure his name shows up in all the right places." I nodded once and leaned back in the chair. That was all I needed to hear. That weekend, I made sure to spend time with our son. Took him to a game, got his favorite food, kept everything normal. I didn't mention anything. I wasn't going to bring him into it until I had the paperwork in hand. He didn't deserve to get caught in the crossfire of her selfish decisions. But I was already preparing for that moment. I had a plan, and I was sticking to it. She didn't come home Friday night. Or Saturday. She sent a few messages, vague ones about needing space, needing to think. I didn't respond. I didn't care where she was staying or who she was with. She wasn't my concern anymore. My focus was on setting everything in motion. Sunday morning, I sent a copy of the photos and a brief summary of her activities to her professional ethics board. That wasn't out of revenge. That was about accountability. She built her whole career on trust and integrity, helping couples who thought their marriages were worth saving. But how could she sit across from those people, pretending to offer guidance, while living a double life herself? I didn't make up anything. I just laid out what I had and let them decide how to handle it. Then came Monday. She finally came home. She walked through the door around noon, looked around like she wasn't sure if she was welcome anymore, and stood in the entryway holding her bag like a guest. I was in the kitchen, eating lunch, not in any rush to greet her. "I guess you know I needed some time," she said without looking at me. I put down my fork and stood up. "You've had all the time you needed. I'm not interested in your schedule anymore." She flinched like the words hit her, but I kept going. I filed. "The lawyer already has everything. We'll be served within the week. You can either cooperate or make it ugly, but either way, this ends now." She stepped into the room, finally meeting my eyes. "You're just going to throw everything away like that?" I laughed once, sharp and loud. "No, you already did that. You just didn't think I'd find out. Or maybe you thought I'd be too weak to act on it." She dropped her bag on the floor. "I don't know what I was thinking. I was stupid. I got carried away. I made mistakes. But we don't have to end it like this. You made choices, not mistakes. Mistakes are accidents. What you did took planning, lying, sneaking around. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate." She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she sat down at the table, across from where I had just been. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to admit what you did. To me. To our son. To everyone you've been lying to." "And then what?" she said, her voice low. "Then you walk away with whatever dignity you have left." Her face tightened. "You think people won't talk about you too? You think they won't say you were cold, controlling, too focused on your job? I don't care what people say. I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who lied. They can talk all they want, but I've got the truth." She stood up again. "Fine. Do what you want. You've already made up your mind. I made up my mind the moment I saw you in his arms. Everything after that was just logistics." She walked out without another word. I listened to her car start, watched her drive away through the window, and stood there for a few minutes, not feeling anything. Not relief. Not sadness. Just done. By the end of the week, the paperwork was served. I didn't tell her when it would happen. I let her find out like everyone else does, by opening the door and seeing someone standing there with a neutral expression and a stack of documents that carry more weight than 1,000 apologies. According to the process server, she didn't argue or ask questions. She took the envelope, stepped back inside, and closed the door without saying anything. That silence told me more than any reaction ever could. She knew it was real now. Not just an argument. Not just some fight that would pass after a few days. This wasn't something she could charm her way through or talk down. This was the end, and it was written in her own handwriting, whether she wanted to admit it or not. I didn't reach out. I let her sit with it. Meanwhile, I made sure everything else moved forward exactly as I planned. I switched the direct deposits to my new account. I removed her access to the shared credit cards. I logged into every utility and changed the contact information. The house would be sold, and everything split down the middle, but until then, I wasn't going to bankroll her double life. The legal agreement included that. She would have to manage her own finances now, without dipping into mine. She made her choice. She could live with it. It took her 3 days to finally call me. I didn't answer the first time. She texted instead, just asking to talk. I waited a couple of hours before calling back. When she answered, her voice was lower than usual, not emotional, not angry, just tired. I read everything she said. I figured you would, I replied. So that's it. No. That's the beginning. The part where you lose what you took for granted. She let out a breath, probably expecting me to be softer, maybe even hoping I'd say something that gave her a sliver of hope. But I wasn't offering comfort anymore. I wasn't interested in smoothing anything over. You sent the files to my office, she said, her tone shifting slightly. I did, I said without hesitation. They needed to know. You've been telling clients how to rebuild trust while lying to your husband and sneaking off with someone else. That's not just hypocrisy, that's professional misconduct. You're trying to ruin me. No, I'm making sure people know who you really are. If your job was based on anything real, it would survive. But if your image is all you had, then maybe you weren't that good to begin with. She didn't reply. I could hear her breathing, could picture her pacing or sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the phone with both hands like she was trying not to drop it. They called me in, she finally said. There's an internal review starting next week. Then I'd suggest you start telling the truth for once. What are you getting out of this? She asked. What's the point of all this? It's not about getting something. It's about consequences. You walked through this marriage like nothing you did mattered. Now you get to see what happens when someone holds you accountable. There was a pause, longer this time. Then she spoke again, voice lower. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't just hurt me. You disrespected me. You lied to our son. You tore up our home to chase something that wasn't even worth hiding properly. So don't tell me what you meant. Tell me what you actually did. She didn't respond again. I didn't push her to. I waited a moment, then ended the call. The next few days moved fast. She tried to send messages, long ones, asking if we could meet, saying she was sorry, saying she wanted to make things right. I didn't answer. Instead, I kept everything professional. I copied her attorney into all communication and sent updates about the house sale, the custody schedule, and financial disclosures. No emotion. No conversation beyond the facts. It wasn't about pretending not to care. It was about showing her that she no longer had access to the parts of me that mattered. Word got out about her situation. A couple of mutual acquaintances reached out, people we used to go out with, other couples from the school, even her former assistant. They didn't say much, just checked in, asked how I was holding up. I told them the truth. No dramatic stories. Just that I was divorcing her because she cheated, and I had proof. Most of them didn't act surprised. That told me enough about how she had been acting outside of my view. The best part wasn't the paperwork, or the silence, or even the legal advantage. It was the shift in energy. The way she carried herself after. She looked over her shoulder more. She walked slower. She wasn't glowing like she used to when she thought she had everything under control. She was no longer the person who thought she could juggle a family and an affair without dropping something. The truth had weight, and it was finally pressing down on her shoulders. 2 weeks after she was served, she asked to meet in person. Not through her lawyer, not over the phone, just us, face to face. I wasn't planning to give her that opportunity, but there was something about the tone in her message that made me pause. Not desperation, not guilt, just this quiet finality like she knew she couldn't hide behind emails anymore. So I agreed. We met at a public park, one of those places we used to take our son when he was little. It was early, no one around, the benches mostly empty. I sat there waiting, not nervous, not angry, just prepared. She walked up looking nothing like herself, no polished outfit, no makeup, just a plain sweater and jeans like she was trying to make herself smaller, like dressing down would soften the truth. She sat down beside me but didn't speak right away. I let the silence sit there. Eventually, she turned to me. I thought I could fix this before it got out of control. You thought wrong, I said. You lost the chance the moment you decided to go behind my back. She looked straight ahead, her hands fidgeting in her lap like she couldn't figure out where to start. I know saying sorry means nothing at this point. It doesn't. But say it anyway if you need to. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for the way I handled it after. I was scared. I thought if I ignored it, if I stayed away, maybe it would pass. But you didn't let it. I wasn't going to cover for you. Not with friends. Not with our son. You made your decisions. You should be the one explaining them. She looked down at her hands. I've already talked to the board. I told them everything. They're putting me on probation. I'll keep my license, but I have to go through oversight for the next year. I didn't answer. That wasn't my problem anymore. She continued, voice quieter. I told Julian we can't speak anymore. He didn't take it well. I think he thought I was going to leave everything and follow him like this was some movie. I turned to her finally. Did you ever plan to leave me for him? She shook her head quickly. No, that was never the point. I wasn't trying to build something with him. I was just angry. I was tired of being second place to your job. I wanted to feel like I mattered again. So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat. I didn't go looking for it, she said, which made me almost laugh. You never do. But you still found it. You still let it happen. And then you lied, over and over. You chose that every day for months. She took a deep breath. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you the truth without a filter. No more pretending. I know I broke this. I know I made you hate me. I don't hate you, I said after a moment. I don't feel anything for you anymore. That's the part you never expected. You thought I'd yell or fall apart or beg you to stay. But I didn't. Because the moment I saw you with him, whatever love I had left for you disappeared. She blinked fast, like she was trying to stop herself from crying. I think about everything I've lost, she said. Not just the marriage. I lost your respect. I lost my reputation. Our son barely looks at me. And I know I deserve that. You do, I said calmly. But what you don't deserve is any more of my time. I gave you years. I gave you chances. I gave you loyalty. And you treated all of that like it was disposable. I know. There's nothing left to talk about. The papers are done. The custody plan is clear. The house is being listed. After this, we don't have to speak unless it's about our son. She nodded again, wiping her face quickly. Will you ever be okay with me being around him again? I mean, really okay. I won't stop you from seeing him. He's old enough to form his own opinions. If he wants to rebuild something with you, that's his choice. But don't expect me to help you look better in his eyes. That's not my job anymore. I don't, she said. I just hope one day he understands that I was human and I failed. That I wasn't trying to destroy everything. Intentions don't matter anymore, I said, standing up. Only actions do. And your actions already wrote the ending. She didn't try to follow me. She didn't beg. She just sat there on the bench, watching me walk away like she finally realized there was no reset button, no emotional rescue coming from me. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. No courtroom drama. No last-minute attempts to undo anything. Just a quiet signature from both sides and a clerk telling us it was done. She didn't make a speech, didn't ask for one more talk. I think she finally understood that nothing she could say would change what had already been decided. We left the building separately, like strangers, no eye contact, no goodbye. Just two people walking in opposite directions with nothing left to hold them together. It wasn't dramatic. It was just over. After that, everything started settling into place. I moved into a new apartment not far from where we used to live, something small but comfortable, just enough space for me and our son when he stayed over. He took the change better than I expected. I think part of him already knew things weren't right, even before I told him what happened. Kids notice more than we give them credit for. When I sat him down and explained the situation, I kept it simple. I didn't go into every detail, but I didn't lie. I told him his mother made choices that broke our family and that we were moving forward. He didn't ask for anything more than that. He just nodded and said, okay. That was it. No crying. No blaming. Just quiet acceptance. I didn't speak to her unless it was about our son. We agreed on the schedule. She had him during the week. I had him every other weekend and whenever she needed help due to work. She didn't push for more. She didn't fight for extra time or argue about logistics. She just did what was required and nothing else. It was probably the most cooperative she had been in years, and I didn't mistake it for remorse. It was survival. She knew pushing further would only make things harder for her. Her reputation took a hit. She lost a few clients, got cold-shouldered at a couple of community events, and had to switch offices to avoid awkward encounters. Word spread, not because I told everyone, but because people talk, and once something like that comes out, you can't control the narrative anymore. I didn't enjoy watching her fall from grace, but I didn't feel bad either. Actions have consequences. If anything, I respected that she didn't try to spin the story. She stayed quiet, took what came, and dealt with it. As for me, life got quieter. I wasn't looking for anything new, wasn't interested in dating or starting over. I just wanted peace. I focused on work, spent more time with my son, picked up some hobbies I had let go over the years. I started cooking more, reading books I'd put off, going for long walks without needing a destination. It felt strange at first, having so much space in my life where all the tension used to be, but eventually, I got used to it. And then I started to enjoy it. People always talk about healing like it's some deep process that requires reflection and soul-searching. For me, it was simple. I stopped caring about her. That was the moment I knew I had moved on. Not when the paperwork was filed. Not when she apologized. Not even when I walked away from that park bench. It was weeks later, when I was sitting on the couch watching a movie with my son, and I realized I hadn't thought about her at all that day. Not once. She was just someone I used to know. And that was enough. One night, out of nowhere, my son asked, "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" I looked at him for a second, wondering if he wanted a specific answer or just felt curious. I told him the truth. I don't know. Maybe. But not for a long time. He nodded and went back to playing his game. That was it. No deep conversation. Just a question asked and answered, like any other. A few weeks after that, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from her. She didn't say anything new. Just that she hoped I was okay, that she was trying to get her life together, that she still thought about what we had. I read it once and threw it away. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need it. She wasn't part of my life anymore, and I wasn't interested in dragging her voice back into it. She had her chance. She made her decisions. And I made mine. I don't regret how I handled any of it. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I didn't drag her through the mud. I stood up, took control, and protected what mattered, my peace, my son, and my future. She chose a different path, and she's living with it now. Whatever that looks like for her, it's not my concern. So that's it. That's how it ended. Not with a fight. Not with a dramatic moment. Just a decision, carried through with clarity. She's out of my life, and I'm finally living mine without lies, without doubt, and without carrying someone else's mess on my back. If there's one thing I learned through all this, it's that peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away when you know there's nothing left to save. And that's exactly what I did.